You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, 4 decades ago, the subject of a documentary on trans culture was murdered. Now her family wants to learn more about how she died and how she lived. We'll talk about I'm Your Venus from Netflix. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us, private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
And finally, our captain of all things cynical, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Stranger Rivals, Rip Current, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin?
Yes.
What's coming up on future editions of Crime Writers On?
Yeah, on Monday, we're going to be talking about the podcast Liberty Lost.
What else, Kevin?
Yeah, we just want to remind folks that we are going to be this weekend at the True Crime Podcast Festival in Boston. And when I say Boston, if you know the area, being in Boston does not actually mean being in Boston.
Not always.
No, it's everything around it is Boston.
Boston North.
Boston, no, I mean, like, because all the different communities are, I mean, they're not boroughs like you could say, well, I'm in Queens, and not say that that's not New York City, but people in all the surrounding communities just say, we're Boston. So it's actually in Danvers, but hey, that's fine. We're going to be there. By the way, did you guys know it's Danvers? You weren't going to go to Boston looking for this, were you?
Yeah, I knew it was Danvers because that's where everybody stayed after my wedding.
Oh,
all right. All right, so
I'm familiar with Danvers. I have memories of Danvers.
Okay, more trauma bonding at the True Crime Podcast Festival. We're going to be doing a live show. We're going to be talking about the Netflix series Sirens. And I think that Toby and Rebecca are going to have different views of this. And I cannot wait to hear it. I am here for it.
I want to know what you think, Kevin. After
Remember
you watch
to use code CWO to save 20%.
And don't forget, after our live show, I am doing an interactive conversation about what's next in the Karen Reed case and everything that happened with my Readathon co-podcaster, Mel Barrett, who will be there in person, who I've never actually met. So there's one piece of podcast industry news I wanted to just chat about briefly.
Okay.
A company whose podcasts are generally kind of excellent and that we've reviewed for many years, Pineapple Street, has been shut down by its parent company, Odyssey. Now, Pineapple Street was founded by Jenna Weiss-Berman and Max Linsky, who have since both moved on. Jenna Weiss-Berman is now working for Amy Poehler's podcast company. Max is interested in all kinds of things. But if you think about the podcasts that have come from Pineapple, The Clearing,
Missing Richard
Simmons, lots of shows that we have loved. I consider this to be a real loss for the industry, considering that some of the most talented people in the industry worked there. Melissa Slaughter, Jonathan Manhevar, Henry Malofsky. Toby, what did you think when you heard this news that Pineapple was shutting down?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't speak well to the direction that the industry is taking in general. It's just another data point in moving away from, I think, what we value in podcasting and moving more towards these celebrity talk podcasts, or it's not really low hanging fruit, but it's like low production, high frequency, so you can sell ads on it type stuff. I don't know what was going on internally there. I wasn't aware that those two people had moved on. So, I mean, who knows as far as that goes, but I mean, that was one of the production companies that when you saw that they were putting something out, like the assumption was that it was going to be a high quality thing.
Yeah.
And it's not around anymore.
I'll just say this one thing before we move on, that when companies are bought by corporations, they have all closed down. Like all the companies, all the independent companies that were sold to corporations have all closed down. Gimlet, Pineapple Street, a bunch of companies that were sold to Sony. These conglomerates buy a thing that's shiny and then run it into the ground, don't know how to run it, or surprise, find that it's harder than they think it was going to be to make high quality work. So I think that's a real shame. And the one thing I encourage people to do when they call me to ask about, should I start something, should I do something, is be independent. I'm telling you, being independent, everybody I know right now who is successful in this industry and actually making money and making a good living and employing other people, they're all independent. They're not owned by corporations. So that's my advice. And we've successfully done that for many years now, Kevin.
That we have.
Thanks to our listeners.
But I would say if, a giant corporation wanted to drop millions of dollars, I probably would say yes.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You guys would be okay with that too,
For
right?
For a life-changing amount of money?
For a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah.
We could go down with the ship. It's fine.
All right, Kevin. So should we talk about the thing we're going to be talking about?
Would love to.
All right. Leading off.
I always felt like I wanted to be a pretty lady, and I wanted to do fashion shows, but for those who can't accept me, I guess it's just because they refuse to see it.
The 1991 trans culture documentary Paris is Burning featured Venus Xtravaganza, a ballroom performer who was murdered before the film premiered. Decades later, the Pellagatti family embark on a journey to solve her death while learning more about the way she lived her life.
She didn't feel that love from the rest of her family.
Her brothers or her family per se?
Well, he's saying everybody.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's probably the reason why she went and explored a new family with the Xtravaganzas.
Her brothers take up the unfinished business of legally changing Venus's name and closing her cold case. But are they ready to hear that their loving acceptance of their sister might have been far too late for her?
We loved our sister. Yeah. Maybe we didn't know how to really show it the way she needed it. I'll live with that. But as I stand here today, I'm going to say how much I loved her and mean it from the bottom of my heart.
Now on Netflix, the documentary film I'm Your Venus explores the themes of trans visibility, chosen family, and loss. It follows the Pellagattis as they try to get justice and acceptance for their lost sister. It also features her ballroom family, the House of Xtravaganza, as they seek recognition for the trailblazing performer they call their own. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from I'm Your Venus. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. So, Laura, I often say that I don't love giving people credit for like baseline human decency, right? For like what they should be doing anyway. It's like, rewarding a kid for keeping their room clean and doing their homework, etc., even though I did reward my kids for those things. But
I have daughters. Yeah.
I do think it's fair to say that these three brothers of Venus do in some ways break the stereotype of people who have in 2025 see themselves as accepting of the trans community and accepting of their sister's legacy. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that was so interesting to watch because they're like macho New Jersey dudes from a generation where now they look back and they're like, geez, we're sorry that we told her not to wear dresses and we're sorry about the way that we did things.
You could see the resemblance in a Pellagatti face.
Look at that.
Right?
Always looking good. Always dancing, and it was like she was so popular. I remember
she was
like
not
in grammar school.
She was a great dancer.
Yeah,
she was ahead of her time for sure.
They're the times that I cherish.
And they talk about the process they went through to accept their sister. They're really honest and they're really vulnerable about the way that they behaved back then, drove her away. But I think this shows that you can always change and that you can always evolve. And I think it took a lot of courage for them to put themselves out there and talk about the process that they went through and be honest about that they were shitty back then. And that, Venus went to go live with her grandmother who loved and supported her and helped her in a way that her brothers and the other part of the family at that time were not able to do. And, now they're talking about let's get her name change. Let's get the gravestone updated. Watching how they have changed and they correctly gender her throughout. And they just talk about her as their sister now. I thought that was pretty remarkable.
I thought it was remarkable too. And I love the way that the documentary, they acknowledge dead names, but they don't include them in the documentary. And every time someone says one, there's no audio of it, which I think is so symbolic and interesting.
They even fuzz out Venus's dead name on her library card.
That's right. It's like it's something that it's like acknowledging the transition and acknowledging the person they are without doing that thing of reinforcing what some members of the audience might want, which is like, who did this person used to be? And the bottom line is, for trans people, it's who they are. So, Kevin, what do you think of these brothers? Because they are, I will say, they remind me a lot of my extended family in many ways. And they are, they're macho dudes with gold chains.
I don't know if that makes you macho. I think it just...
One of them's a truck driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're fascinating. Like, to pick up on what Laura said, they are not coded as allies. I mean, to use the language. So, but they are so earnest and sincere when talking about Venus. You're right. They never misgender her. They also use like modern terminology embraced by the trans community when talking about things. It's like you say, they put in the work, right? 60-somethings from New Jersey are not known for their open-mindedness, but they just seem so honest and sincere. I gotta say, though, I don't actually recall them, except a little bit at the end, really talking openly about any negative way they treated Venus. They just seem to be in that. Now, whether they are misremembering this, or they've changed things in their mind, I didn't really see, and I don't think the documentarian, there's a couple places where I think the documentarians missed some opportunities. I don't really think they dug in to what that could have been. You can't say that, like, one would be surprised if, you got 4 brothers in the 1980s and one of them is coming out as trans, that the other 3 wouldn't be shitty to that person in one way or another in 1980. And instead of confronting that, or at least explaining and giving some context, it is great that today that they are loving and completely all in on being supportive of her and her memory. I think you kind of wanted to know, because, and we got to talk about Jose's meeting, but it like completely sets up the power of that meeting, because it kind of switches some things up. So anyway, love the brothers completely by, like, I don't know, cameras on them. Everybody might change the way they act in front of a camera, but they really look like they are completely sincere in the way that they have become allies.
Right. Well, they're sincere today in being allies today, but their sister is no longer alive. And Toby, at one point they are confronted with what their sister actually thought about their level of support when she was alive. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I want to say first is that I think, especially among people who you wouldn't expect to be allies, I think the biggest like predictive thing is if they know or are related to somebody who is trans or any of the LGBTQ things. I mean, I think you look at Dick Cheney as sort of the most obvious example of somebody whose basic politics would not lead you to believe that he would be supportive, but the fact that he had a daughter who was gay, his ideas about gay marriage were completely different. And I kind of felt it would be similar with these guys, in that this is our family and we're going to support regardless. But this meeting with Jose, which, they sit down with Jose. Jose is a friend of Venus's, and he says that Venus said that she didn't feel loved by her family. And the brothers are just like totally taken aback. Like, you can kind of see that this is going to be coming. Like, when he says it, you're like, okay, the brothers are not going to fucking like this, and then one of them is just like, I don't know how she could say that, we loved her, blah, blah, blah. And this is, I think, again, like, I don't know how the rest of that conversation went. They do have this thing where Jose says, well, it's clear that you love her because you're here now.
It wasn't that you guys didn't love her.
I'm sure she came and bitched him on because I gave her hell.
Part of it may have been true, but that she felt rejected. That's understood.
It was not hard for me to envision them feeling as though they were loving and supportive, but without meeting sort of the needs or expectations that Venus had in the way she was treated. And I think that can often revolve around things like dead names, not treating her as a girl or woman all the time, but thinking that's something that can be kind of turned on and off. Mm-hmm. And so that was when John was saying that he regretted telling Venus not to dress like a girl when she took the baby out to walk in the carriage. Mm-hmm. He's like, I probably shouldn't have done that. And it's like, well, that's a good realization at this point, because again, you're making it seem like it's a costume that she can put on or take off, and that it's not a big thing.
Right.
But it's not hard to see her like leaving home and being like, my brothers, like, even if they mean well, they're just constantly doing this thing that undermines my sense of my own self. And they don't understand how painful that is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, that was a powerful scene. I wish they maybe had stayed with more of it. Like, it's obviously cut way down because it's like 30 seconds. I'm sure they met for an hour. I would expect that there was probably some more interesting stuff that was said there, but it was good to include at least some of it.
You know what was interesting to me, Toby, is that the brothers are also bonded through trauma because they were abused when they were kids by their mother's husband. They talk about that in this very brief scene, that he would beat the shit out of them and the mother would get mad at them when they fought back, right?
I looked at the vodka bottle one day. I said, you really love this shit. I fucking bashed him right over the head with it. Mommy went nuts, threw me out of the house. Yeah.
I think that's the reason why Mommy moved to California.
Yeah, it was getting physical.
I told him, I'll kill you. I'm going to kill you.
I think about that environment where Venus moved across the street to her grandmother's house because her grandmother was more accepting, but also these boys were living like in a horrible situation. And it just shows us sort of the complexity of what they experience themselves. And I found myself wondering, what kind of capacity did young men and boys have to accept a trans sister in the early 80s when they were also the victims of abuse by a man who was married to their mother, and their mother like seemingly hated them? Because they said it wasn't until she moved away.
You mean Mommy?
Yeah, Mommy moved away, that they were able to sort of get where they're at right now. Right, Kevin?
Yeah. Hey, but can I stop the discussion just for a second so we can get some business out of the way?
Yeah, because there's no clever way to do that, I think, out of this conversation, right?
No, there isn't. I mean, there's probably some really bad outtakes where we but you're not going to hear them at any level on Patreon.
Never.
Patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia. You can help out this podcast and keep us going by supporting us there. In exchange, you're going to get exclusive content like the Crime Writers on After Show, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, Married with Podcast, our relationship advice podcast, and Rebecca's ongoing look at the Karen Reed case, the Readathon.
And affiliated stories.
And everything in the Karen Reed cinematic universe. We also have Laura Bricker's exclusive podcast called Leave It to Bricker. And Toby Ball continues, like I said, with the deep dive. You can see him and his guests talk about their books. The latest book that Toby's panel is discussing is called A Death in Belmont. That's classic. Other ways you can support us is by checking us out on Amazon. There's a big company right there. Amazon, they gave us a storefront. And that's where you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, what are this week's Amazon recommendations?
Nerd clusters. Next question.
Explain. What?
Nerds clusters are the greatest candy ever invented. And I have started eating them. They comprise like 30% of my diet these days.
Yeah.
And even Kevin likes them. And he's not as much of a sugary candy person as I am.
They're a tiny, like, gummy. And it wrapped in all those little nerds. You get the sweet, you get the tart,
yep.
you get
two textures in one.
Yeah.
They're great little size. You can eat one or you can eat 100. They're fantastic, and I buy them by the 3-pound bag. So, yeah, Nerds clusters.
And Toby, what are your listener-inspired Toby Balls Deep Cut recommendations?
Okay, I'm going to start off with the Dog Sling Carrier Soft Carry Slings front pack for small puppies / cats. I assume those are different things and not puppy cats. Under 15 pounds, adjustable wrap, anti-pet, anxiety, easy use, hands-free. I'm just here to tell you that it is not going to be fucking anxiety-free for my cats. If they had to be in a sling like that, it would be a huge anxiety boost, and I would get the shit scratched out of me as they tried to escape.
I think I know who bought that of our listeners.
All right, you're like on top of this stuff recently.
I do. I think I know.
How about this one? Fancy Feast Gems Pate Cat Food Mousse with beef and a halo of savory gravy cat food. Dash. And this is where it gets confusing. Parentheses, pack of, and then there's an emoji with sunglasses and a smiley face. And then it says 4 ounces, and then it says boxes. So if you can figure out what the fuck's going on there, you're way ahead of me.
How did you pronounce the P-A-T-E? How did you pronounce that?
Pate? What would you say?
Pate.
Pate.
Yes. But he also says rather. It goes in, in line with his accent.
It's pronounced pad thai. and it's a very famous dish.
But I like how it's a halo. It's not like the congealed stuff when you open up the can. It's a halo.
You know that shit isn't gravy.
Dude, there's nothing halo-ish going on in that thing.
Yeah.
Fancy Feast?
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm sure it's a fine product. I just don't understand what a pack of emoji with sunglasses and a smiley face is supposed to mean.
You just reminded me of my best friend Yuri Buchanan, who had to read text messages on the witness stand and was like, smiley face emoji, sunglasses emoji, heart eyes emoji.
Yeah.
It's just something like that. So remember, you can shop us first when you go to Amazon, amazon.com/shop/Crime Writers On. We earn commissions on qualified purchases.
Kevin.
Yes.
Do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Jackie Hackett and Shanna Smith. Bless you.
Jackie and Shanna, I can't thank you enough for your support of this show. It means the world to us. We can only do what we do because of you and people like you. So you get all the flowers from us this week. Jackie and Shanna, thank you so much. Kevin, does that end our business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to fade that music out. Laura Bricker, the style of this documentary, obviously Venus Xtravaganza featured prominently in Paris is Burning, the documentary, and they use newly edited footage from that documentary and footage, I guess, that didn't appear in the documentary, but then they edited for this and combined it with documentary footage. What do you think of stylistically, whether or not that worked for this?
I think it did work for this because I think, number one, we got to actually see and hear from Venus, right before she was murdered. And I think it really highlighted, what it was like to be trans at that time in a very honest, but also just sad way when you hear about the only way that she could earn money was through sex work and how she was, hustling, doing sex work, and somebody realized she was trans, one of her clients, and lashed out, "You're a freak and I should kill you." And she jumps out of a window. But then you hear her just kind of like talking generally, and you see her kind of going around. But I think being able to see the old footage along with the new interviews really brought her and her legacy and the story to life in a way that you wouldn't have been able to really get the same feeling from if you just heard people talk about her or saw still pictures, to hear her in her own words.
Yeah.
And I think you also get that bigger picture of the legacy in that community when you hear from the new interviews from younger people in the ballroom culture, again, which is something I didn't know anything about, and how they looked up to her and how that inspired them and guided them and gave them confidence on their own journeys.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really well done.
I think that everybody who's interested in the topic of ballroom and voguing should listen to 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, the episode about Madonna's Vogue. It goes in depth into how Madonna co-opted pieces of that culture for her own benefit while never acknowledging the culture and kind of what the culture was needed for and brought about and how it saved people's lives. It's a very interesting episode. I learned a lot listening to it. Kevin, did you know about the ballroom culture?
Oh, well, I did because I listened to that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I also had like this sort of appreciation watching it that if it were not for like the isolation and rejection and marginalization of that community, they never would have created this wonderful culture that's theirs, that grew out of the need to adopt. And I just thought, this is really powerful and hopefully empowering. And I think one can appreciate what something is while also abhorring the conditions that brought it about. A lot of our ethnic culture and whatnot are sort of born out of sort of similar friction points, right? And so either you preserve this or you do something new. It's great that the brothers wanted to show up at one of the things and kind of
so
to
funny.
show support. I'm also kind of wondering later, this really isn't for them. So I hope that
That time it was.
Well, yeah,
That one time.
That one time, yeah. You can be an ally, but sometimes being an ally is knowing when to shut the fuck up and let people do. This is for you. You do your thing, right?
Yeah. So, Toby, we do see some activism in this documentary. We see both the brothers petitioning to posthumously change Venus's name and get a new marker on her tombstone. But we also see this landmark commission that House of Xtravaganza pushes with Jersey City to make the house where Venus grew up a historic landmark. What do you think of these efforts at activism?
Yeah, I thought they were interesting. I mean, one of them, the gravestone thing, seemed like a very personal thing that would be known by her friends, and I guess through this documentary, more people. But that seemed more like sort of a family healing type thing, whereas the getting it, well, I don't know if it's being put on the historical registry or whatever in Jersey City, that's sort of more of a public acknowledgement of her importance. I thought that scene seemed sort of to be the emotional climax of the whole thing. And you feel good when you're watching it that you have these activists talking to people who aren't activists, who are just people who happen to be sitting on this committee in Jersey City who just totally get it, right? They have one representative of the committee who does most of the talking, but, he talks pretty eloquently off the cuff about what it all means to have this place designated like that. And he seems to sort of get it from the perspective of the brothers and the rest of the community who's sort of presenting to them. I mean, that does feel like the one victory that really happens here. I guess beyond the brothers sort of working through whatever it is they had to work through individually with their history and present.
I think we should mention that posthumous name change was actually precedent setting, which was something that we heard in the documentary.
For that state, yeah.
Yeah. Laura, we do hear and we do see that the brothers are essentially trying to solve their sister's murder. And they go to this very fancy looking law firm at the World Trade Center to do so, to meet with these lawyers. And we learned that somebody had confessed to the crime who died in prison. And then it was, after they died, it was said that they had confessed. The one brother had a lot of doubts about that, and I have to admit, so did I. I was like, that sounds like a story the cops made up. They probably pinned a bunch of shit on this dead person.
It seems like a convenient answer.
Yeah. What did you think about this plot line in the documentary, this attempt to get answers about the murder?
Well, I felt like this wasn't the strongest part of this documentary. Like, I think that the kind of evolution of the brothers and how they've come to accept their sister, the community that Venus was a part of, I think all of that was very strong. I think this was kind of like the side thing that was added in, and also because, yes, she was murdered and it is unsolved and people want answers. So you have these attorneys who are kind of like, sweet, we get to be in a documentary. And then, you hear about he confessed and it supposedly confessed to murdering a prostitute, or, that was the wording they used, in a hotel, strangled her, bound her. Once we believed she was dead, I put a mattress over her to hide her body. Then a day or two later, the person hangs himself.
I just can't get over a fact. Somebody's in jail, and you're too fucking naive, the both of you, to think somebody's who's
John,
in
you
jail
don't think
and
this
raped.
ever happens? It happens. You think people want to sit?
They kill themselves, but they don't admit to killing people.
I mean, obviously, he said something that only the murderer would know.
These type of crimes were not taken seriously at that time period in New York. So the fact that they're like, conveniently this happened, and then you get a little glimmer of hope because they're going to do this DNA sample that they had from this suspect who hung himself, and they had material from under her fingernails, and it doesn't match. So they're like, well, we can't rule him out, but we can't rule him in. But it's one of those where you really want for everybody to have the closure of like what actually happened. But I came away feeling like it was a little bit of lip service.
Yeah. Kevin, what did you think about this murder investigation part? Because one of the brothers was right, as it turns out. And I was right too. Not that it's about me, but
it's always about you.
He was right. And he was just like, that sounds like a bullshit story.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that the cold case part of it sputtered, because a lot of cold cases do. I am surprised that the brothers were never told the details about how their sister died. I really, really like this documentary. I do feel like there were parts here that the documentarians kind of missed, and they made some editorial choices that I wouldn't have. But they don't really sort of drag out the emotions of the brothers on a couple of these things. And this is one of the few times where you kind of see them get frustrated and, become really sad about the loss of their loved one. And yeah, I would have liked to have heard a little more about how they dealt with that and really how they regarded their sibling at the time. Did they see her as a sister at the moment, or did they see her as an outsider or whatever? Like, that context is important to me. It may not be to other viewers, and it seems it wasn't to the documentarians. Again, it's a quibble. It's just an editorial choice. I get why people would see it a different way. But regarding the cold case, no, I'm not surprised that they didn't solve it.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out I'm Your Venus documentary on Netflix? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down for I'm Your Venus?
Yeah, this is a thumbs up. I thought this was extremely well done. It was the right length. It covered a period in trans history that was really interesting with this ballroom culture. It had Venus at the center of this, who was really kind of somebody that was, as her brother said, and I hate to use this expression, ahead of her time, and somebody that was comfortable with who she was and knew who she was at a time when that was very dangerous to be, because that was not accepted by a lot of people. And you get to actually hear from her through archival footage from the film that she was in at that time. And I think it's really interesting because it also shows kind of chosen family versus biological family, how those two reconcile not only her murder, but also sort of the change in everybody's understanding and acceptance. And they come to a place where they all, I think, are very vulnerable and honest about what they've been through. And I think it was really interesting. I thought it was really well done. Big thumbs up.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for I'm Your Venus?
So I have kind of mixed feelings about this. I think the first thing I would say is that given our political moment, this feels like kind of a radical documentary. And in a lot of ways, I just feel like any opportunity at which people can see trans people humanized during a time when so much effort and political capital is being used to dehumanize trans people. I think just for that, I'm happy that it's out there, and I think people should watch it. Although I fear that most of the people who don't have the issue with dehumanizing trans people. With that aside, we have to review what we see and not what we wish we saw. It just felt as though there was a little bit more time spent on the brothers and their journey and their reactions to things and stuff like that, and a little bit less time spent on particularly people who knew Venus back at the time, sort of reflecting on her life and what she did. Look, I never really got a sense of like why Venus was such a hero to people or such a like star that people look to. Like you do see these things from Paris is Burning in which you can see she's like quite a character and things like that. But I just felt like there was probably more stories and more insight given during some of these scenes that were filmed and then were then edited down for the documentary, which of course you have to do. But I ended up sort of wishing I knew a little bit more about Venus and her life and maybe a little bit less about the brothers kind of going through this process of discovery or whatever it is you want to say about what journey they do. It really feels like it's really more about her brothers. And I think that was sort of maybe, in my mind, sort of a misjudgment about what was the most interesting part of this. And I think using the brothers as a framing device, but not necessarily having them be the center of the whole thing would have been the choice I would have taken. So anyway, I'm a mild thumbs up. I really wish it was better. But if again, anything that's out there that is having people take a look at the lives of trans people in a way that is sympathetic and humanizing and, both sides of it, the difficulties and also the joys of it. I can't say don't watch it. I think it's important.
Kevin Flynn, thumbs up or thumbs down for I'm Your Venus?
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up on this. First of all, I'll say I've never seen a title card bring the viewer up to date and understand the stakes so efficiently. In just that scene there, you get context, history, theme, what the present action is. It was just like super efficient. And the documentary itself, it's not perfect, even though it's really good. There's some surprising characters here. Yeah, these three brothers are not the kind of people that you think would be in 100% on honoring a trans sister. And the fact that they are, it's very enlightening and hopeful. And there are other parts of it where I thought they could have gone a little deeper and explained it, because it's more than just where people are today, where these characters are today in how they regard Venus. I feel like that they could have done more about explaining what was actually going on with her in 1988 at the time that she died. And I want to know, are these brothers here because they evolved to get here? Are they here now because it's a kind of penance for what they did in the past? Or were they just always just this open, wonderful, completely accepting family from this New Jersey side street where everybody that they were related to lived in a tenement building across from one another? I found those characters to be really interesting, and we probably didn't get as much Venus as we probably could have. All that being said, I thought the story was really enlightening and life-affirming, and I hope that, as far as what Toby's talking about trans visibility, that this advances that cause.
Yeah.
And I would say that I also enjoyed in that scene, with the landmarks, about the Landmark Commission, that Venus is being honored as a pioneer and not as a famous murder victim.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I also was wondering, does this mean that the guy can't paint the front door now? Because he's got to go to the historical commission because now it's a...
Yes, that's probably
it is.
what
Okay, all right. So
you're going to have to get Benjamin Moore historical colors.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, again, me really focusing on the most important things. Anyway, I'm going to say I'm a thumbs up for I'm Your Venus.
Yeah, both you and Toby, I think, pointed to what I wanted from this documentary. I actually wish it was longer, which I don't say very often. This could have been a 2-hour 20 piece to get further into ballroom culture, what it's about, how it evolved, to get further into Venus's significance in the world. That being said, we got 3, what I would call jabronis here. Jamokes, as my mom would call them. Everyone's these are my mom's cousins. I feel like I know them. In a moment where there is almost complete capitulation to the hate and dehumanization of trans people in our culture. It feels like we were about to turn a corner a couple of years ago, and now we are back 20 steps. Just today, as we're recording this, news came out that a major university is stripping a historic sports title from a trans woman for no reason other than capitulation. It's straight capitulation, and it is horrible, the moment that we are in right now when it comes to all kinds of human rights issues, but in particular, trans human rights issues. And it's not being labeled as a human rights issue. It's being labeled as politics by people who don't have as much stakes in the game. I would have loved, honestly, to see the brothers discuss that, how they feel about their sister now does or doesn't separate them from their cultural community, how they got here, how they feel about what's happening in the world right now. And that could be because this documentary is largely being made before we've hit the peak of this political discourse, which I still don't think we have. I don't know what the process was and the timing, but I wish it was longer because I think it would have been interesting to see the brothers confront that and to see the brothers really dive into the complexity of their own childhoods. I don't mind that they are the main characters in this because I think that people need to see people who look like them be open in a way they are not. And I think this documentary does a good job of that, but could have gone even further. So yeah, thumbs up for me for this. I wish it was longer. I wish it went deeper, but I liked what I saw enough to give it a thumbs up. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week.
Crime of the Week!
Police in Spain got more than they bargained for during a recent traffic stop. The cops pulled over a 70-year-old man for erratic driving and not wearing a seatbelt. The driver told the officers he should have run them over and threatened to kill them. Then he opened the back door of his van and released a swarm of bees that attacked them. The cops were stung multiple times until they retreated to a nearby restaurant. The officers were given cortisone shots to help with the stings. The suspect drove off but was captured a short time later, but the bees are still on the loose. So panel, tell us about the next human who will wield the power of nature to commit their crimes. Laura Bricker.
Somebody that works with me to wield the power of their army of cuddle cats.
Oh, that's a very, very good choice. Toby, what do you think the next human is who will wield the power of nature to commit their crimes?
That guy who has that 40 to 45 feral hogs on his property.
Ah.
Do you guys remember that?
I kind of do.
Yeah.
What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Aquaman, and he's going to get all those fish to do robberies for him.
You know that Aquaman isn't actually a human being, right?
He's like
He's
Atlantean. Yeah, he's a hero.
He's Jason Momoa.
But he's going to break bad, is what I'm
Oh,
saying.
you think?
I see. I see.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, Speaking of animals, do we have a cat of the week this week?
We do. We have something that cats like that a lot of people get upset about when cats go outside. This comes to us from Lydia Bertrand. A robin couple decided to build a nest on the porch, like right next to my front door. I've been checking on the eggs daily. They must have hatched in the last 24 hours or so. We'll just have to use the back door for the next 2 weeks while the parents are flying back and forth feeding the babies. I have lots of delicious insects and worms in my yard because I have a large native plant and pollinator garden. And she sent some really cute pictures of the little birds going, wah! They're probably not as loud as the baby owls in your neighborhood, but they're still very cute.
Yeah, you know what's louder? The fucking whippoorwill. Jesus Christ, that bird. It's like having a rave in the neighborhood every night. It won't shut up, and it's making me crazy. All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you online to submit any kind of animal to be pet of the week, how can they find you there?
They can find me at Laura Bricker on Blue Sky and Instagram.
Toby Ball, how can you be found online?
At Toby Ball NH.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm everywhere at Kevin P. Flynn.
And I'm
By
everywhere.
everywhere, not really everywhere, but yeah.
Not literally?
No, not literally. Yeah.
I'm everywhere, literally. Right, Kevin? At Reb Lavoie. The show is everywhere, including TikTok at Crime Writers On. And we have an awesome Facebook group. Just look for Crime Writers On Podcast on Facebook. You'll hit our page, and there's a link there to join the group. Get everything we make on Patreon. And boy, it's a lot. 120 episodes of the Readathon alone at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. Our theme song was composed and performed by Tyler Gibbons, and our editor is the really terrific Livy Burdett. Welcome home, Liv. The EP of this show is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in Studio C, the closet, our New Hampshire basement that has also been declared a local cultural landmark. It's true. The Historical Society in our town is all over it. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
It's okay. And I will have a special guest, frequent contributor on Leave It to Bricker, Lance.
Oh, nice.
Lance is going to be there? Nice.
Lance is going to be there and is going to have a name tag that says Lance.
Nice. Nice. Of course.
And then he's going to get carded at the bar, or they're going to ask for his hotel key, and it says, my name is Lance, and find out that isn't actually, that's his stage name.
Right.
Oh, wonderful.
It's his stage name.
Okay.
Right.
Partners in Crime Media.